Your father knew something about women that he never told you, not because he didn't love you, but because society convinced him that passing down this knowledge would make him a bad father, so he stayed silent. And you learned the hard way, through heartbreak, through confusion, through years of wondering why nothing your mother told you about women actually worked in the real world. Today, that silence ends. I'm going to tell you the 7 truths your father wished he had the courage to share. This isn't about hating women, this is about understanding them. If you're a man who's ever felt like you were playing a game where nobody explained the rules, this video will change everything. Why this knowledge disappeared. Picture this, 1985. A father sits his teenage son down for the real talk about female nature, attraction, and how relationships actually work. Back then, normal, expected. Fast forward to 2025. That same conversation, it's called toxic masculinity. Here's what happened. We went from men and women are different, and that's beautiful, to suggesting differences makes you a bigot. Fathers got scared, not of their sons, but of being cancelled. So they stopped talking, and an entire generation grew up believing that being nice is the path to attraction, that your mother's advice about women actually works, that treating women equally means treating them identically. None of this is true. Your father knew it. He watched you struggle, and every time, part of him wanted to say, "Son, let me tell me what's really going on." But he didn't. Today, I will. Truth 1. Women don't want equality in attraction. Women don't want equality when it comes to attraction. They want polarity. You became the nice guy. You asked for permission. You treated dating like a democracy. And women lost interest. Not because you were bad, but because you eliminated what creates attraction. Masculine-feminine polarity. Here's what your father knew. Women are attracted to men who lead, not dominate. Lead, make decisions, have direction, stand firm in values even when tested. When you constantly ask, "What do you want to do?" or "Is this okay?" you're not being respectful, you're being uncertain. And uncertainty triggers the opposite of attraction. The psychology, evolutionary psychologists like David Buss, document that women across AL cultures are attracted to confidence, status, resources, and ambition. Notice what's not on that list. Agreeableness, seeking approval. Your father watched you ask a girl, "Where do you want to eat?" 17 times. He knew she was losing attraction with each question. The truth he wanted to tell you, women say they want equality, and they do, in society and legal rights, but in attraction, they want a man who's more certain, more decisive, more grounded, not better as a human being, but more masculine in energy than she is feminine. That's not sexism, that's polarity. This doesn't mean being an asshole or ignoring her opinions. It means having a plan, making decisions confidently, standing by your values and leading with purpose. The irony? Women who most vocally advocate for equality are often most attracted to men who display traditional masculine leadership. Truth 2. Her words and actions will contradict. What she says she wants and what actually attracts her are often completely different. She says, "I want a sensitive guy who shares his feelings." Then she dates the guy who does none of these things. Here's what your father wished he told you. Women don't lie, they genuinely believe they want this. But attraction isn't a choice, it's a feeling. And feelings don't care about political correctness. Research shows women's stated preferences differ dramatically from who they actually choose. In speed dating studies, they choose men displaying confidence and unpredictability, even when those men score lower on kindness. Why? Because attraction happens in the emotional brain, not the logical brain. Your father observed, when your mother said she wanted him to open up more, but he actually did, her attraction dropped. Not because she's bad, but because vulnerability in men, in the wrong context, triggers protection, not attraction. The truth. Women want you to be capable of depth. They want to know it's there, but they don't want it as your default state. If you're constantly emotional, constantly seeking reassurance, you've reversed the polarity. She becomes the rock, and attraction dies. This means being selective about vulnerability, maintaining your center, processing emotions largely on your own, and showing depth without drowning her in it. When she asks, "How are you feeling?" she wants to know you have feelings, but she doesn't want a 45-minute therapy session. Truth 3. Hypergamy isn't a myth, it's biology. Women date up, men date down. This isn't sexism, it's biology. Hypergamy, women's tendency to seek partners of higher status, isn't outdated thinking. Your father lived it. Studies show even high-earning women still prefer men who earn more. Even educated women still prefer men with equal or higher education. The data, 71% of women won't date a man earning less. Women initiate 69% of divorces with financial issues as a top reason. In online dating, women message men rated 25% more attractive than themselves. Your father saw the pattern everywhere. The girl you liked was always interested in the guy slightly ahead of you, more popular, more successful. The truth he wanted to tell you, this isn't about women being shallow. It's understanding that attraction for women is tied to security and status in ways it isn't for men. You can't just be a good guy. You need to be a man of value. You need ambition, direction, growth. Because the moment she feels like she's settled, attraction begins to die. This doesn't mean being rich or perfect. It means being on an upward trajectory, having ambition, being respected and improving, not stagnating. Truth 4, she will test you. And she should. Women test men constantly. And passing these tests is the difference between respect and resentment. She says, "You never take me anywhere nice. My ex used to fine, do whatever you want." You think these are literal complaints, so you scramble, defend, try to fix it. And she loses more respect. Here's what your father understood. These aren't complaints, they're tests. She's testing whether you'll hold your frame or collapse under pressure. Why? Because she needs to know if your confidence is real. In ancestral environments, a woman needed a man who stayed calm under threat. Modern women do the same. The threats are different, but the testing mechanism is identical. Your father saw your mother test him constantly. When he stood firm, her attraction increased. When he caved, her respect decreased. The truth. When she challenges you, she's not starting a fight. She's finding out who you really are. When she says, "You never take me anywhere nice," she doesn't want you to frantically book a restaurant. She wants you to calmly say, "We went to that Italian place last week. What's this really about?" This doesn't mean being an asshole or ignoring legitimate concerns. It means recognizing when you're being tested, staying calm, not getting defensive, and maintaining your frame while being loving. Truth 5, your mission must come first. The moment you make her your mission, you lose her. Every romantic movie taught you she should be your everything. It's also the fastest way to kill attraction. Women are attracted to men on a mission, not men whose mission is the woman. When you make her the center of your universe, you lose your identity. You become needy. You become boring. You become suffocating. Psychologist Esther Perel's research shows attraction requires separateness. When two people merge completely, desire evaporates. Your father observed, men who abandoned everything for their wives' hobbies, friends, goals, their wives lost respect. Not because they were bad husbands, but because they became boring, predictable, needy. The truth, love her deeply, be a good partner, but never make her your entire reason for existing. Have goals that scare you, have a mission that would drive you forward, even if she left tomorrow. Because here's the paradox, the more you need her, the less she wants you, the less you need her, but choose her anyway, the more she values you. Truth 6, emotional availability has limits. There's a difference between being emotionally available and being her emotional tampon. Modern advice says, be vulnerable, share your feelings, it's not wrong, it's incomplete. Women want access to your emotions, but they don't want to be your therapist. The difference, emotional availability means, I'm capable of depth when the moment calls for it. Emotional dumping means, here's every anxiety and insecurity, fix me, validate me. One builds attraction, the other kills it. Research on attachment styles shows women are most attracted to men with secure attachment, men who can be intimate without being needy, vulnerable without being weak. Your father observed, men who became sensitive guys, who shared everything. Their wives became therapists. Attraction transformed into maternal caretaking. The truth, process your emotions with other men, with a therapist, with yourself. Bring your processed emotions to her. She wants to see you can be vulnerable. She doesn't want to be the only person you're vulnerable with, because if she is, she becomes your emotional crutch, and you can't be attracted to your crutch. Truth 7. Respect comes before love. She can love you without respecting you, but she cannot desire you without respecting you. Society tells you all you need is love. Your father knew, love without respect is friendship at best, resentment at worst. A woman can love you deeply while losing all sexual attraction. Why? Because love and desire are not the same. Love is a choice, desire is a response, and desire requires respect. Your father watched marriages where wives clearly loved their husbands, but didn't respect them. Maybe he never stood up for himself. Maybe he had no ambition, and the bedroom went dead. Research shows respect is the strongest predictor of lasting attraction. Dr. John Gottman's research revealed that contempt, the opposite of respect, is the single greatest predictor of divorce. The truth your father desperately wanted you to understand. Your job is not to make her love you. Your job is to be a man worthy of respect. When you stand firm in values, lead with purpose, maintain your mission, pass tests calmly, that's respect. Do these things, and love will follow naturally. but chase love while sacrificing respect, you'll end up in a relationship where she cares about you but doesn't want you. You can't negotiate respect, you can't beg for it, you can only be respectable. The marriages that lasted with passion intact, they all had one thing in common: the wife still respected her husband, and that respect kept attraction alive. The conversation your father never had. So why didn't your father tell you any of this? Because he was scared. Scared of being called old-fashioned. Scared of your mother disagreeing. Scared of you thinking he was sexist. Scared of society labeling him toxic. And in his silence, he failed you. Not because he didn't love you, but because he loved his reputation more than he loved giving you the truth. Your father's generation had these conversations. His father probably had this exact talk with him. This wisdom was passed down for generations, until it wasn't. Until society decided that acknowledging biological differences between men and women was offensive. Until masculine became synonymous with toxic. Until fathers became afraid to be fathers. And an entire generation of men suffered for it. You suffered for it. You dated women, wondering why being nice didn't work. You got friend-zoned by girls who said they wanted a nice guy. You watched women choose men who treated them worse than you did. You got into relationships where you gave everything, and she slowly lost interest, and nobody told you why, until now. These 7 truths are not about manipulating women. They're about understanding reality. Women are not the enemy. Female nature is not evil. Hypergamy isn't a character flaw. Tests aren't games. The need for masculine polarity isn't oppression. It's just nature. And when you understand nature, when you work with it instead of against it, everything changes. You stop resenting women for being women. You stop blaming yourself for being a man. You stop fighting biology and start leveraging it. And you become the man your father wished he had the courage to help you become. The path forward. So what do you do with this information? First, understand that this isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming more of who you already are. You don't need to be an alpha male caricature. You don't need to be a pickup artist. You need to be grounded in your values, clear in your purpose, confident in your direction, respectful of female nature without resenting it, strong without being rigid, and emotionally available without being needy. Second, start small. Pick one truth from today and focus on it this week. Maybe it's standing firm the next time you're tested. Maybe it's reconnecting with your mission outside the relationship. Maybe it's processing your emotions with male friends instead of dumping them on her. Small changes compound. Third, find other men on this path. Your father's generation had this figured out because they talked to other men. They had mentors. They had honest conversations. You need the same. Fourth, be patient with yourself. You've been programmed with lies for decades. Unlearning takes time. You'll make mistakes. You'll slip back into old patterns. That's okay. What matters is that you're aware now. Finally, remember this. These truths don't make you a bad person. They make you an informed person. Understanding female psychology doesn't mean you hate women. It means you respect them enough to see them clearly. Your father knew all of this. He lived it. He saw it work. And now, so do you. Closing, the legacy. This video is the conversation your father never had with you. But it's not too late. Whether you're 25 or 55, single or married, struggling or thriving, these truths apply, because human nature doesn't change. The women your grandfather courted responded to the same things the women you're dating respond to. The dynamics that made your parents' marriage work or fail are the same dynamics in your relationships. Biology doesn't care about political correctness, so take these 7 truths, test them, apply them, see for yourself if they're real. And when you have a son, when you have a younger brother, a nephew, a friend who's struggling, have the conversation your father didn't have with you. Break the cycle of silence, pass down the wisdom, be the mentor you wish you'd had, because the next generation deserves better than learning through heartbreak what can be taught through honesty. Your father loved you, he just didn't have the courage to tell you the truth. But I do, and now you do too. If this resonated with you, if you finally feel like someone's speaking the truth nobody else will say, subscribe to this channel because we're just getting started. This is Psycore, where we explore the truths most never question. And today you questioned everything you were taught about women. Welcome to reality. It's uncomfortable, but it's real, and real is what you needed all along.